All right, welcome members. This is the regular scheduled meeting of the Private Probation Service Council. As you know, since we have some folks teleconferencing in, we'll go over the agenda and then we'll also notice the meeting and then the statement of necessity then. As a reminder too, we'll have to vote on every actionable item, do a voice vote for each of those items so that we can maintain that for the record. So if without further ado, if I may, I'll go ahead and call roll. Judge Alexander.
Here.
Linda Byford.
Here.
Stancil Ford.
Here.
Judge Logan.
Here.
David Nemo.
Present.
Judge Starnes.
Present.
All right, we have quorum. Now for the notice of meeting. A notice of the August 3rd, 2018 meeting of the Private Probation Service Council was posted to the Private Probation Service Council website on July 25th, 2018. As for the statement of necessity, anytime we have a teleconference, we read the statement of necessity, and then we just adopt that statement of necessity as a board if it is the will of the commission, or the board rather. So if we will, let me read that. According to TCA 844-108B2, if a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of a governing body, the governing body must file such determination of necessity, including the recitation of facts and circumstances on which it was based, with the Office of Secretary of State no later than 2 working days after the meeting. Furthermore, TCA 844-108A3 defines necessity as matters to be considered by the governing body at that meeting requiring timely action by the body. That physical presence by a quorum of the members is not practical within the period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communications is necessary. This is the regularly scheduled meeting for the Private Probation Service Council, and the purpose of today's meeting, with some members attending by teleconference, is to discuss the agenda as noticed on the website earlier. If that's satisfactory with the board, if I could have a motion in that regard to accept that as our statement.
So moved.
Stancil Ford. I'll make that motion.
We have one motion by Judge Logan. Mr. Ford, would you like to second?
I'll second that.
All right, now for a voice vote, let me go down the roll. Just an aye or nay or a yes or no will be fine. Judge Alexander? Linda Byford?
Yes.
Stancil Ford?
Aye.
Judge Logan?
Aye.
David Nemo?
Aye.
Judge Starnes. All right, that's that. Thank you, sir. That covers that portion of the agenda. If we can move to the November minutes. Upon review, did anyone have any comments or any questions or any edits that they would like to make as well? Unless there's any comments, if someone would like to move to adopt as written, we would so accept that.
David Nemo, so moved.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Stancil Ford, second.
We got David Nemo as the motion, Mr. Ford as the second, and for roll, Judge Alexander. Linda Byford.
I'll abstain due to being absent from that meeting, sir.
It's fine. You can, of course, do that. But if you've reviewed it and it appears to satisfy either your recollection or your review of the electronic meeting, then that would be fine as well.
All right. Well, then, aye.
Okay. Stancil Ford.
Aye.
Judge Logan.
Aye.
David Nemo. And then Judge Starnes.
Aye.
All right. That passes by unanimous voice vote then. We'll move on to the next item, the director's report. Primarily, this will be for informational purposes, most of it. If we hit any actionable points, then we'll address those as we go. Let's just go in, if I'd like. I want to welcome the new council members. We've got 4 new council members. We've got Judge Alexander, we've got Judge Logan, Judge Starnes, and then we also have Judge Brody Kane. He wasn't able to be with us today, but I imagine we'll see lay eyes on him on the next meeting in November. So we look forward to that as well. All the judges, of course, come from a wide variety of backgrounds, but we look forward to your contribution to the board. We know that you bring a wealth of information and experience, and so we appreciate that and look forward to leveraging that in the next couple years. So unless somebody wants to make any other comments, we can move on. But if there's anybody who would like to make a comment or address the rest of the board, they're welcome to do that as well. All right. Well, thank you guys for your service. We appreciate your service to the state, and we look forward to serving you as well. If we can, let's look at the meeting dates. Let me address a couple of technical issues right quick.
Are those already set?
They are not. No, they are for discussion. We just these days with two. We've got 3 meeting rooms, but 2 board meeting rooms equipped for recording. We have 1 or 2 that we can use kind of as a fallback. So we have to do this well in advance. But the probation meeting dates, I'll just give everyone a chance to look at those. Those are February 1st, May 3rd, August the 2nd, and November the 1st. Now, typically, we canceled the first 2 meetings of this year. We don't have to keep all of those meetings. It's as needed basis, but we need to at least lock it down in the calendar so we have that as an option. So we won't have any more than 4 meetings, but we very well will probably have less than 4 meetings. So anybody have any questions or comments or any particular date that will not work for them? And again, we modeled that after the prior schedule. It's always a Friday. And it's Friday at 10 o'clock as well, that will stand. Okay, if that reconciles with everybody, if anybody wants to make a motion to accept, we can go forward with that.
Judge Logan, I move we accept meeting dates.
Judge Alexander, I second that.
For roll call vote, Judge Alexander?
Aye.
Linda Byford?
Aye.
Stancil Ford?
Aye.
Judge Larry Logan?
Aye.
David Nemo?
Aye.
And Judge Gary Starnes.
Aye.
All right, thank you all. That was accepted by unanimous vote. Now for the budget. We're going to dig in there a little bit. We're going to spend a little bit of time on the budget, just for the benefit of not just for the benefit of our new members, but also I think it's a good refresher since we haven't had 2 meetings. We didn't have our first 2 meetings. We're going to go over the end of last fiscal year. We're also going to go over the snapshot of just how we're trending this fiscal year, and explain some of those categories as well. So without further ado, we'll jump in there. Once I get there, okay. All right. As you can see from the budget, basically, and let me explain those columns first. You've got if you look at that first column, private probation revenues, and right underneath that, private probation expenses. This is a snapshot of the entire fiscal year, this fiscal year. And so at the top, we have everything we're bringing in, and then down below, everything we're spending. And I'll just break that down. You've got licensing revenue. That's exactly what that is. It's just licensing revenue. Anytime someone in the course of licensure, as they pay those fees, that's the revenue that comes in under that category. Case revenue is any sort of agreed citation, or if there was some formal action, disciplinary action that was taken, and then whatever was paid in as a result of that, that would be your case revenue. As you see, that's pretty stark. We don't have a lot of cases. I think we have 4 on the docket today, so we just don't have a lot of cases, and typically they expedite through. State reg fee. It's put underneath the revenue, even though it's actually a chargeback. What they call it this is the accounting term. I'm not an accountant, but they refer to it as a reduction in revenue. And to me, that sounds like an expense, but the way they explain it is it's a workaround is what it is. We don't print out our licenses. Fiscal and F&A does that. Finance administration does that, and then they charge that to us, and we don't have a category in the other category, so they just put it there. So basically, if you got $40, they charge $5 per license. You're looking at 8 licenses that they printed out for us. That's what that is. It's a reduction in revenue. The Edison expenditures. Edison, and our new members, you'll become familiar with Edison here very soon if you haven't already, if you haven't worked for the state. but it's basically our clearinghouse for everything HR and expenditures procurement. I mean, we payroll goes through Edison. You know, if you were to take leave or time off, you do that in Edison. If you were to order supplies, that happens through Edison. So Edison expenditures encompasses a lot of things. If you want to get a look at what Edison expenditures actually encompass, some of those, sometimes you could go to the next page, and it's kind of small. We might have to draw it up a little bit, but as you see, you've got wages, salaries, benefits. You got payroll expenditures. You got travel, printing. You know, you got rent, vendor services if you hire a vendor to do anything, fax lines, phone lines, stuff like that. That's what a lot of those codes are, like 725. Let me take a look at that one if I can find it. Yeah, state professional services. That would be like your rent, your fax lines, building expenses. That, and then right there, that first column is your budget, and then your actual expenses for the fiscal year follow that, and you can see that as we go through. So that's your Edison expenditures. So if we go back to our snapshot, anytime you see Edison expenditures, that's what it is. It's this the cost to do business. Then you right underneath that is administrative cost backs. Administrative cost backs are they're very similar to Edison. There's a lot of again, it's a minute. You do have administration cost backs that there's some things in Edison that don't, there's not line items for. So additionally, you would charge that on administrative cost backs. You know, where Edison allows you to procure or to make those allotments, allocations, you do it there. But where you don't, you do it on administrative cost backs. Also, administrative cost backs. Administrative cost backs include the private probation share of the liquidation of all administrative cost backs from all the programs. The share is determined by licensing count, number of complaints, and budget plan, which accounts for 0.118% for the private probation service council. So, now, obviously, when they're coming up with the plan for how we're going to allocate all those costs, because you have some costs that aren't maybe specific to a program, but they're shared. So what we want to do, they have to kind of prorate it based on size of program, number of licensees, because complaints cost money too. You got to work those number of complaints, and then they create a budget plan. So the budget plan for private probation services is 0.18%. Let me put that in perspective. 16% of the administrative cost backs is for cosmetology and barber. We haven't even made it to 0.1%, whereas Cosmo and Barber alone has 16% of the total administrative cost backs. Well, you can imagine with 60,000 licensees, the amount of complaints, that's why their budget or their administrative cost backs is so large. So let's put that in dollars and cents. Administrative cost backs for private probation services council is $488 for this month. So for the month of May, last reported, the administrative cost backs for Cosmo Barber was $43,000. So you kind of get the idea, and that's out of a total administrative cost backs of $271,000. So yeah, very similar to what you would see in Edison expenditures as well. Until we vote, if you want to put your phones on mute, that would be helpful as well. And then when we vote, you'll have to, of course, switch it back off so we can hear your vote. Just there's some feedback oftentimes that comes with about the teleconference. But anyway, back to the budget. If you look, there's spikes in revenue. You'll look at, and it doesn't show real well, it didn't translate very well, but in August 17th, you had $12,000. November, you had $11,000. February, $11,000, May, $11,000. Very different compared to the rest of the months. So where's all that revenue coming from? Did everyone just decide quarterly to get licensed, or where's that money coming from? That money right there is coming from the quarterly provider fee under Rule 1177-01-08. Each private entity shall pay a quarterly provider fee to the council in the amount of 75 cents per quarter for every person reported on the caseload of the entity in the quarterly report. So as you can see, that's reflected. That quarterly provider fee from the providers hits on May 20th, August 20th, November 20th, and February 20th of every quarter. So if you see that spike in revenue, that's where that's coming from. Is there any questions thus far? Oh, yes, I guess we should finish. Legal cost backs. Legal cost backs, anytime the attorneys work the complaints, they charge by the billable hour, which is, as you know, is industry standard, and so then that's pitched back on the program. So investigations would be anytime an investigator, maybe perhaps a vendor is ordered to go look and research something is required, then that's where that is. Field enforcement right underneath that. That's more typical with, we see higher costs with Athletic Commission and with Cosmo and Barber because they're inspecting the shops. Athletic Commission, they're going to the events, inspecting, the bouts and the fights. So you could need a big field inspection staff there. So a lot more cost there, whereas this program doesn't necessarily have much of that. And then, of course, our customer service center. Now, that's basically our call center. Anytime anyone wants to file a complaint or needs help, they're our first line, and so they charge that to the program. That trickles down to the programs based on their volume as well. So just based on that right now, is there any questions, comments? Okay. All right. We've already seen Edison expenditures, so we know what that is, that second page. Let's go to the last page. The last page is our snapshot of the fiscal year revenues, year-end revenues. Each year that's reported, so we get the trend for our fiscal year, but then we also get the high-level macro look at each fiscal year in comparison as well. Much of it's self-explanatory. A lot of those items look very familiar. If I may, let me just draw you to the high points. Of course, you've got your expenditures on top. It's reverse. You've got your expenditures on top, and you've got your revenues below that. Okay, we're interested in the last column, fiscal year 16 through 17. That was our most recent fiscal year, and so we'll go down that route. Our expenditures were $31,000. Cost backs, which we discussed. Below that, if you look on that last column, you'll have total cost backs $15,000 added to the regular expenditures, Edison items and the like, and then for a total expenditure of $46,000. Now, just below that, we have revenue. We have licensing revenue, which totaled about $81,000, and then we have our fiscal year balance, which of course nets us $34,000. Added to the prior year reserve balance, which gives us a reserve balance after everything's said and done last year, a standing reserve balance of $689,000. So, and we'll add to that. It looks like right now we're tracking for about $20,000 to that reserve balance. Now, the first question that comes to mind is, well, do we want to build reserves? No, that's not what we're about. You don't want to be in the habit of building reserves. Now, statutorily, you have to be self-sustaining. So the trick is, self-sustaining is, since there's not a mathematical formula for what determines self-sustaining, there's a lot of opinions, a lot of folks that weigh in on that, and typically that's determined at the sunset hearings. When you go to legislators, when they decide, they'll look at your 2 renewal cycles, which is typically they're looking at about typically 2 years, typically, to see if you're self-sustaining. Now, if you're running in the red 2 years in a row, they start to get a little concerned. They want to make sure that you're keeping your head above water, but they're also looking at your reserves. So in the past, administration, executive management, depending on who was monitoring that, would have formulas. Some would say we need to have enough in reserves for at least one renewal cycle. Others would say, well, that may be too much. Ultimately, it's up to the legislators. They're the ones that tell us, look, we try to stay ahead of it, and so we go into those sunset hearings, and we know we can have a game plan for them depending on which way they want to go with that. But at the sunset hearing is where that happens. We had one in February where 8 of our boards went up to Capitol Hill, and they had that discussion. Some were identified for cuts, some weren't. This one thus far hasn't been, but that doesn't mean it couldn't change. I mean, if we keep tracking it towards if we keep piling on the reserves, then that'll have to be addressed. And typically that happens in reductions in revenue, licensing fees. Matter of fact, I believe that's happened recently with the quarterly provider fee. And some of the folks that have been on the board longer can tell us it used to be $1, now it's 75 cents. And if they adjust that again, perhaps to dig into those reserves. And the trick, though, is you want to dig in the reserves, but then you don't want to hurt yourself. You don't want to create some precedent that eventually will not only bleed you dry in your reserves, but then get beyond that sustainability level. So you're there again. So that's the balance. It's a tricky balance. I don't think anyone has that down to a science. It's typically, you just go under review during sunset. Anybody have any questions in regards to that or comments even? We welcome those as well.
This is David Nemo. Do they look at that fee every year, or did you say it was every couple years? Or it seems like we're still growing, even though we did reduce it recently.
Anytime we're up for sunset, we weren't this last cycle. So I would say pretty soon when we come near the end of our term, they run on different terms. I don't know right off the top of my head when that term, if it's 4 or 6, but when they hit that point, before we go into those sunset hearings, we typically like to have action plans in place. Since they lowered the provider fee from $1 to 75 cents recently, I would say that was probably I have to look at it, but it's probably in response to that sunset hearing then. So I imagine another couple years we'll be at that again, looking at that, and other creative ways too. There's other options with other boards based on I think the personality of whatever those boards have and what they have at disposal at their own within reach. A lot of programs have like education recovery funds. Well, not a lot, a couple programs, but so there's options other boards can employ that maybe perhaps this one can't. So we typically just look at licensing. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Unless there are any more comments, and of course you're always welcome to direct those to me as well, and then we can have that discussion as needed throughout the year. So we don't have to wait to a board meeting to do that. If you have any questions about anything that we go over, just reach out to myself or Ms. Hooper as well, our staff attorney, and then we'll be glad to help you. There's nothing actionable there, so we won't have to vote on that. That's just for your information. Okay, let's see what else. I think we're ready for the legal report then. Legislative.
Good morning. I'm Sherelle Hooper. I spoke with many of the new members via phone for orientation. It's great to have you all on the council. The first thing I'm going to do is go over the legislative updates from this past legislative session and see whether or not you all have any questions. There were 3 bills that were applicable to the PPSC. None of these laws were exclusively applicable to the PPSC, so bear with me as I kind of explain these acts and how they apply to the council. The first one is bill number SB 2465/HB 2248. It has since become public chapter 0793. This is called the Fresh Start Act, and this act requires that certain state departments, boards, commissions, or agencies not deny an application for a license, certificate, or registration, or refuse to renew a license due to a prior criminal conviction unless the conviction directly relates to the applicable profession. This act sets out notification requirements for the agencies that intend to use a conviction as the basis for denial of licensure. It sets forth factors that must be considered in determining whether to deny or refuse to renew the license on the basis of a criminal conviction, and it sets out that certain crimes create a rebuttable presumption of being related to a profession, provides information that must be contained in the notice of determination by the agency, and provides a decision under the act may be appealed to the Davidson County Chancery Court within 30 business days of receipt of the notice or refusal to renew. A potential applicant may also request a pre-application determination from the agency as to whether a conviction will prevent the person from becoming licensed, and that became effective July 1st, 2018. Any questions or comments? And the next piece of legislation was bill number SB 2603/HB 2386. It became public chapter 1021. And this act sets out that the venue for appeals of contested case hearings, except for hearings involving 10-care appeals, shall be in Chancery Court nearest to the place of residence of the person contesting the agency action, or alternatively at the person's discretion in the Chancery Court nearest to the place where the cause of action arose, or in the Chancery Court of Davidson County. So that is a new law, and it's effective. It became effective on July 1st as well. Any questions or comments? The final piece of legislation is Bill number SB 1573/HB 2437. This became Public Chapter 0519, and this act requires all agencies holding a public rulemaking hearing to make copies of the proposed changes available in red line format. And this became effective on July 1st as well. And so if there are no questions or comments, I will move forward with the legal report. And
I don't have any.
thank you. Moving to the legal report, you all should have a copy of this as well to follow along. This report is from the litigation attorney, Ashley Gino. She's an assistant general counsel here, but she could not be present today due to a conflict, so I'm presenting on her behalf. We have 4 cases today, and I'm going to explain the cases, and then at the end of each explanation, I will need the court to make a decision and take a vote on whether or not to adopt legal's recommendation. The first case is PPSC 2018-013-651. This particular provider has some history. It received a letter of caution in 2010 for the matter. This was a consumer complaint alleging respondent violated him for not paying for his anger management class. In response, respondent indicates complainant was violated 2 times, October 28, 2014 and April 7, 2015, after he stopped reporting to the probation officer, failed to pay his fines and court costs, and failed to attend the court-ordered anger management classes. Legal's recommendation was to close that complaint.
You need a motion?
Yes, I would need a motion to accept that recommendation.
Judge.
So move, Mr. Chairman. It's stansel forward.
All right, great. Do we have a second?
Second.
That Judge Logan second. Now for roll call. Judge Alexander.
Aye.
Linda Byford.
Aye.
Stancil Ford.
Aye.
Judge Logan.
Aye.
David Nemo.
Aye.
Judge Starnes.
Aye.
That was passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. The next case is case number 2018-025211. In this case, this is a consumer complaint alleging misconduct from respondent regarding procedures enforced upon his fiancée who is currently incarcerated. Specifically, the complainant alleges his fiancée was incarcerated for failure to comply with respondent's recommendations, which he claims were impossible for one person to be in compliance with. He also claims there were issues with the drug test, which he believes the respondent mishandled. In response to these allegations, respondent indicates the fiancé is serving a sentence on its community corrections program, which is a felony alternative supervision program, not private probation. This was confirmed with both the respondent and the court. The court's order demonstrated the fiancé pled guilty to felony charges, and her sentence was suspended to community corrections. Pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 163902, the purpose of the council is to ensure that uniform professional and contract standards are practiced and maintained by private corporations, enterprises, and entities engaged in rendering general misdemeanor probation supervision, counseling, and collection services to the courts. Based on that, because this complaint involves felony supervision, this council would not have jurisdiction over this particular complaint, and legal's recommendation is to close and refer to the Tennessee Department of Corrections.
Are there any comments? Okay. We'll entertain a motion to that regard if somebody would like to so do.
David Nemo, I'll make the motion.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Yes.
Judge Logan.
Starnes.
Okay. We'll take that second from Judge Starnes then. So then by roll, Judge Alexander.
Aye.
Linda Byford.
Aye.
Stancil Ford.
Aye.
Judge Logan.
Aye.
David Nemo. And then Judge Starnes.
Aye.
All right. Passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. The last two cases are against two different respondents. They are well, they're not PPSC providers, but it's against two respondents that are accused of providing such services. In those two matters, a consumer wrote to the council. Well, first, sorry, let me go back and read the case numbers. The case numbers were 2018-034-511 and case number 2018-034. I'm sorry, 2018-034-491. In those cases, a consumer wrote to the council inquiring as to where the respondent's profits go because, in his opinion, he's seen nothing but a revolving door. He claims everyone goes on probation time after time. He also claims respondent number 1 is owned by a human resource agency and respondent 2 is owned by a judge, which he believes is a conflict of interest. He added that he believes the state should run all probations. So for respondent number 1, and that's case number 2018-034-511, respondent number 1 is a nonprofit human resource agency. As such, it is governed by the Tennessee Human Resource Agency Act of 1973, which in pertinent part provides under Section A, it is hereby declared that the agencies created pursuant to this chapter shall be a body, politic and corporate, and shall be public and governmental bodies acting as agencies and instrumentalities of the creating and participating counties and cities, and such agencies are declared to be for a public and governmental purpose and a matter of public necessity. Because of this, the council would not have jurisdiction over this complaint. Respondent number 2, and that's case 201-034-491. Respondent indicates it is not owned by anyone, it is a nonprofit. Respondent number 2 further indicates there are no current or former judges on the board at this time, nor are there any family members of judges on the board at this time. In response to the revolving door allegation, respondent number 2 states it is within the discretion of the sentencing judge to determine how a sentence should be served. Respondent number 2 added that if a judge determines probation through it is an appropriate measure to meet the goals of sentencing, then that is what the judge will order. So legal's recommendation is to close both of these cases.
David Demo is respondent number 2, if I'm reading this right, has a history, but did you say they were not?
Respondent number 2 is a nonprofit, and so it is in fact a provider, but respondent number 1 is a nonprofit. Respondent number 1 is a human resource agency. So I want to correct that for the record.
This is Judge Alexander. On respondent number 2, it says, indicates there are no current or former judges on the board at this time. Now, is at this time at the time of the investigation, or was it at the time that the complaint was entered?
I would have to review the response again to make sure before I provided you with the response. Let me see if I have a copy of that response with me. I may.
For those of you that are teleconferencing in, the staff attorney is just researching that real quickly, so just please stand by.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we only have that last case remaining, and so while we're researching that, we do have one more item under new business, and then we'll just return to that case, and hopefully we'll have an answer for you then, okay? unless anybody has anything that they'd like to add to new business, and I'll pause for just a second. I do have one item. Does anyone have anything that just comes to mind that they'd like to discuss or that they would like to put on the agenda? Okay. Then, if I may, then let me talk about election of officers. And you think to yourself, now, this is our first meeting, and we're talking about elections of officers. We got 4 brand new folks, and we're gonna have an election. But it just seemed right since it's August and the primary is just wrapped up. We figured we just have that discussion. But we're really the issue is TCA code 16-3-906. Let me just read it to you for just as a primer. It says the council shall annually elect from its membership a chair, vice chair, and other officers as deemed expedient. In an effort to satisfy that statute, we could vote today because it's more symbolic. As you can see, we didn't have a chair today or a vice chair, but we were still able to conduct business. It's not going to be any sort of obstacle to our progress or to our meetings. But we do want to satisfy a statute. That's important to all of us. So, and it does say annually. So if not at this, meeting, perhaps at the next meeting. If one of our maybe more senior members would like to volunteer themselves, not to throw somebody underneath the bus, but then that would be fine too. But of course, these all of our judges too, they know all about procedural, and they could handle that with probably I'm sure much better than I as well. So no one would be forbidden. If anyone would just like to throw themselves out there, they're welcome. Or we can just have that discussion in November. Either's fine. Of course, we can't cancel November now if we don't choose somebody today, because then we'll be under that statute. We'll have to select then. But it'll be a short tenure because obviously we have to do that each year.
This is Judge Logan. I don't believe in putting things off, so I think we need to elect somebody now.
Were you volunteering, Judge?
No. I'll do it if nobody else will.
And it's just chair. It's basically just about what I was doing. You accept the motion, you would accept the second, and then if we needed a voice vote, of course I'll always read the roll. So that's really about the extent of it as far as historical process. And then the vice chair just steps in when the chair is absent. That's really the extent of that.
All right, I'll be glad to do it.
Okay. So we have Judge Logan as chair. Do we have a vice chair? Anybody? Any takers? Silent. All right, Judge Alexander, we got a winner. Okay, so we just need a motion to that regard that Judge Logan would be the chair and Judge Alexander would be the vice chair. Do we have a motion in that regard?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, that was an emphatic move. That was an emphatic motion there by Ford. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Nemo is seconded. Then for a voice vote, Judge Alexander,
Aye.
Linda Byford,
Aye.
Stancil Ford,
Aye.
Judge Logan,
Aye.
David Nemo, and Judge Starnes.
Aye.
All right, we welcome our new officers. Congratulations. And, I guess now we know why Judge Brody Kane missed this one, don't we? I think he owes you guys. But all right, thank you very much for stepping up. Appreciate that. We've satisfied that statute, so we're good to go this year.
So we did have a chance to pull up the documents associated with case number 2018034-491, and I was able to verify that the complaint was received in April of 2018, April 19th specifically, and the response was filed on June 11th. So when the respondent says that there are no judges on the board at this time, I think it can reasonably be construed to mean that it would include the 2 months prior when the complaint was filed. If you all agree, then please make a motion to adopt the recommendation. And if you think that we need further clarification on that issue, we can certainly do that as well. So,
Well, since I raised it, I'm happy with that answer, so I'll make a motion that we accept it. Thank you.
thank you.
Judge Alexander has made a motion to accept the legal's recommendation. Do we have a second?
Second.
Judge Logan has seconded that. Now for a voice vote, we've got Judge Alexander,
Aye.
Linda Byford. Linda Byford? Okay, great. Stancil Ford,
Aye.
Judge Logan,
Aye.
David Nemo,
Aye.
Judge Starnes.
Aye.
All right, motion passes by unanimous voice vote. Unless there's any new business, does anyone have one more opportunity? All right. Well, unless I think we're good on that regard. We've worked our way through our agenda, so now it's just a matter of adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right.
Stansel Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Judge Logan is seconded for voice vote. Judge Alexander,
Aye.
Linda Byford,
Aye.
Stancil Ford,
Aye.
Judge Logan,
Aye.
David Nemo,
Aye.
and Judge Starnes.
Aye.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you for your participation. Have a lovely day.
Little, huh?
Jump on board and off you go.